A strong and independent woman is something to behold. She pays her own bills, buys her own things, and she doesn't let a man affect her stability or self-confidence. She is a soul-rich woman. Are you ready to be rich doing what you love? Be on purpose and in control of your life again. At For Women Who Love the F Word podcast, we will be openly talking about getting more clients online, getting recognition as the leader and female entrepreneur, and also the F word, being fabulous, having freedom, and financial independence. It's time to own and love the F word. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Soul Rich Woman TV, for women who love the F word, being fabulous, having freedom, and financial independence. My name is Janisha Alvora. Today we have CEO and co-founder at DataVisor. Yinglian is here with us today. And Yinglian, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit more for our audience?
Okay, great. Thank you. It's my great pleasure to be here. My name is Yinglian Xie. I'm the CEO, co-founder of DataVisor. DataVisor is a company that leverages the AI machine learning combined with big data technology to help large consumer-facing enterprises to fight a variety of fraud, abuse, and money laundering activities. We are based in Silicon Valley, and our headquarters is there. And we also have offices in Beijing and Shanghai.
Wow. And for you, being in a position of power of influence, and this topic is about being a woman of influence, how do you define being a woman of influence?
I think being a woman of influence can be very broad, and sometimes people interpret it a little bit more narrow way. And influence is that as women, we actually are influencing in many different ways, right? We play different roles, and we influence, for example, in workplace, our co-workers, and as a leader, we influence our team. And but there are also bigger influences. We influence the family and the friends. We influence our children, and so to some extent, the women actually have a great influence on the society in general, and it can be actually like very broad and deep.
Yes. So what are some of the myths and obstacles of a woman at your level, right? You know, challenges that you face?
I think that the challenges we typically face because as a startup co-founder and a CEO, and relatively speaking, woman is still the minority. So I would say from that perspective, and there are like sort of disadvantages of the perspective. For example, when you go to events and when you have a lot of for example, go to startup events, when you have a lot of guys, CEOs, and all co-founders, you sometimes would find it a little bit difficult to start conversations, etc. And because when they see you, they didn't see you as a CEO. They didn't feel you at that position. Maybe their stereotype is probably like representing the company some position. It could be. And there are also definitely other places where I also felt woman has also a unique advantage as well. For example, like women sometimes, I would say, like sort of definitely this issue is being paid attention to, right? Kind of this gender minority imbalance. So there are channels and for women to advocate, and there are cases where, for example, we can kind of use these to expose ourselves a little bit more and the companies a little bit more, and these are the potential opportunities as well. But in general, I would basically to say I would encourage, I think the key is to really encourage, have the level of support for women to pursue our own dreams and to be like sort of more like the risk taking and doing things like to realize fulfill like our life goals. But this is, I understand this is very personal as well, and but I think with the awareness and of now the society, with the support from family and friends, I think it will become better.
So I'm really curious, how was it for you when you first started on this journey? Because you talk about being minority in a very male-dominated space, right? And and you still mention about chasing your dreams and believing in your vision. So can you share a little bit more about your journey?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. First of all, I would say overall, I still feel myself lucky. And lucky in the sense that me and my co-founders, we both actually are female co-founders. It's a company of the technology, but we actually are fortunate enough to work with many of a few of these greatest investors in the world, and they definitely did not hold any view of like we're women and want to treat us differently. So I felt very lucky. Actually, I didn't feel like the severe pain, like sort of to say, as many others do, of working with investors and customers. But on the other hand, during some of our early, like for example, like startup process, I also did encounter of others who would think of this slightly differently. For example, as an example that I mentioned in the past as well, that when Fang and I, my co-founder Fang and I, were looking for funding opportunities or looking for general thoughts and advice of our directions of potential startups, we would face investors and having the comment of, two charming ladies want to do a startup.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe subconsciously just a comment, is that serious? Things like that. And I think once we started serious dialogues, people realize we are very serious, and they generally would not have that comment. But I would just say on the surface, when seeing maybe the image of two female co-founders, sometimes that question could raise up.
Yeah. So they question your ability and you question your seriousness, right? So my question will be, how did you turn it around? Of course, you said having a dialogue with them, but do you think that women have to work harder and turn things around for themselves because they are women? Do you think this gender inequality part is really sometimes working in favor or disfavor of us?
So as myself, I did not think very intentionally that I need to work around harder. That didn't come across to me, and I felt maybe there is some like a lucky part that I was able to work with some of these best investors in the world who actually are extremely supportive and extremely helpful. So I didn't have that strong feeling of I need to work harder. But in general, startup is hard. So I always felt I need to work hard. And that is a fact, I believe, regardless of man or woman, we have to work very hard, particularly as an entrepreneur. And it's just not an easy journey. And so that kind of awareness and that kind of thing always pushed us through. And my comment is really like sort of regardless what we do as like sort of whether it's a guy and a woman, we as we pursue our dreams, we always have to work very hard. And there are definitely, see others commenting, they face some obstacles. Women have to work harder, but my personal experience, I feel I'm probably the lucky side, And maybe it's just I've not thought about this way, but we've always been working very hard.
Do you think influence, working very hard and influence goes hand in hand? Because when we have a certain influence, we don't really need to work hard, but we can choose to work hard and smart at the same time. So what are some of the qualities a woman should have to build her level of influence?
Yeah, I think sometimes I feel influence, whichever level, comes from like the established based on result and based on the examples you've set and the respect, for example, others developed. And so the influence, I would say, is not immediate, but it's gradual. It's kind of anything you want to have an influence, you build upon time, and so that's how I see kind of where the influence comes from. But as a woman, like sort of from the influence, like sort of a perspective, I definitely felt that you mentioned. I feel this probably is true regardless, because as mentioned, the gender image, people, because it's so male dominant, people probably from the first intuition would not establish that strong correlation between like sort of a woman and a strong leader on a first thought. This is kind of we mentioned subconscious maybe bias psychologically that could be present just because statistically it's smaller. But I think the what we want to overcome then is what we mentioned, that the influence comes gradual over time. So you do have the disadvantage of maybe bias initially, but we can also try to overcome that with the influence over time.
Yeah, so influence to you is a gradual process that needs to be built over time. So to add on to that, to what you have said, is that do you think that foundations of having that imaging that you talk about, building that brand imaging for a new startup founder or female entrepreneur who is just thinking about starting out, do you think that first, personal branding is important, which you have said yes? Two, what are some of the key areas they need to work on before maybe meeting and going out for pitching or building or starting their business?
Yeah, so I take this external kind of going out pitching, etc. I also take it very seriously too, because that from the startup perspective, entrepreneur perspective, every potential external pitch not just represent person, but to some extent represents a company as well. So I think as I mentioned, the influence is gradual, and that pitch also people want to. You also want to basically build and think about carefully, and maybe build carefully as well. In a sense, is put into these thoughts in terms of what message you want to deliver, for example, to the investors, to the external customers, and to some extent, this is something everyone needs to work on very hard. From particular for a startup, just because you're a startup, you're new, you haven't established that credibility. How do you convince others? Right? That is a harder thing. It's a hard thing itself, but definitely echo back to the topic woman. You're overcoming that initial bias, the image kind of maybe bias, to add to that pitch. I definitely can understand that bit, and.
So I want to add on. So I need to hold you there, which is like, do you think the women should be not saying dressed in a certain way, but some of the key foundations they need to build first? Like for example, get their profiles right, or get their messaging right first before so that when people search about them, they have more enhanced credibility. What are some of the things that you also would like to add on to share with them?
I definitely think that personal profile and credibility is important regardless of the gender in general.
Yeah.
That is important, and but I do agree. And as a woman, that is particularly important because, as I mentioned, there could be some initial subconscious bias out there just because statistically we are a smaller population. Yeah.
But we will conquer the world. Okay, last two questions. So in your journey, once again, were there any times that you feel really vulnerable? Because as you build such a big company, with so many, your big team and co-workers, were there times that you feel vulnerable as a woman?
I wouldn't call it vulnerable. I would call maybe the times when you feel it's super challenging, maybe. And in particular, as a first-time entrepreneur, there are a lot of challenges that we face. Every stage of the startup, you face new problems coming up. And also startup is a journey. It's not like sort of a straight line curve. You would have up and downs. You would always have these times when you feel kind of more like sort of being kind of this this is obstacles you want to overcome. There are new challenges, and what you should be doing. But I would say, luckily in our case, me and my co-founder, we actually worked together for a really long time. Actually, before starting the company, we've collaborated for over 7 years. And so that great partnership actually is one of the keys that hold us all together throughout this journey and going through the challenges and difficulties, because after all, you will have a great partner working with you regardless, and good or bad. That itself is, I would say, it's priceless and really precious. And
yeah. I love that. Can you share a little bit about the partnership? Like, what are some of the qualities of looking for great partners? I think a lot of the women out there, they try to find partners, but sometimes it goes into like disaster, or some of them are really successful. So what are maybe a few key things that you look for?
I would say we didn't like sort of intentionally look for, because we were lucky. We've collaborated for 7 years, right? And we formed like a sort of great like sort of partnership and friendship and work through each other. I think there are like sort of a few things in retrospect now I look like kind of hold our partnership so tight, so dear to each other, and to the extent I feel it's formidable for both of us then to move forward together is I think we actually share a lot of common background and come from very similar like background locations, and both of us 2 kids, family. We live close. There are a lot of commonalities, definitely can echo with each other. More important, I think we also complement each other. We have slightly different personalities. We have different strengths and weaknesses. We complement each other. And not only that, but we are very open to each other in the sense that we can talk about our achievements and we can talk about our personal weakness and shortcoming very openly to each other. I think that's important. That's important in the sense of as we make our progress, there are a lot of things we need to improve ourselves. And having someone you can be very openly talk about our own weakness and pointing out the other's weakness, and not being defensive with each other, but actually to encourage each other, to help each other conquer this is super important in the sense to do self-reflection and to help both of us actually improve. And so that kind of channel, you have that kind of channel, that kind of sharing. Yeah, it's very helpful.
And you said you have 2 kids, so as a mompreneur, how do you cope and manage that?
Well, it is very challenging, I would say, for both me and my co-founder. And so when I started the DataVisor, my younger kids is about like 3 years old. I think for my co-founder, hers is probably 1 year old. So at a very young age, I think one thing with you, both of us, is to find the support. I have my family support. My parents are very supportive. My husband is very supportive, even though like he works full time. He's very busy, But they support you mentally. They did not see like sort of they support you to realize your dream. I think that's very important. That's one thing you really need to say. You are quitting your job and you're quitting a very kind of good income, stable income, and suddenly doing things a little bit unstable. They need to accept that. Not only that, they need to cheer for you. They feel this is great. I think both of us are kind of lucky to get that factor of a support from family, and that is tremendously precious and important to us. And then after that, it's all about doing. You mentioned work smartly. We have to admit, both of us, with the family, sometimes, for example, the working hours, and I go back. I always make myself try as much as possible go back to family for dinner time, right? And that's one. Both my co-founder and I would do. Like sort of, it's all about time management and work smartly, and then you spend more quality time with your kids, and also how do you creatively about making kids more independent. There are ideas I would say. So there are like sort of always ideas along that. I wouldn't say like sort of we are always doing the best, like or the perfect, but we are all trying to work very hard, at least to balance work and family. And I think the key is that family sees that and then they appreciate it. Even maybe they didn't feel we do as much good, but they're supportive, and that's very important.
I love that. And Soul Rich Woman is also all about women supporting women. So what is your greatest accomplishment up to today? Greatest accomplishment?
You mean women like support?
So it's your life and your business.
I feel that the greatest accomplishment myself is that we actually are brave enough to get out and create DataVisor, and DataVisor is growing really strong, like sort of growing from idea concept to today, like over 100 people startup, and in the deep technology area, and basically based in like sort of in the valley, but also having offices in different parts, like in US and China. And we are extremely also proud to serve many of the largest actually enterprises in the world. They range from like social commerce side, gaming side, to financial side. Some of the names including in the US like Yelp, like Pinterest, and from Europe like Letgo, and from China, for example, JD, Dianping. Yes, these very large companies. We are very proud to serve all of them. Yeah.
Wow. Last but not least, what is the one advice that you give to our viewers out there to chase their dreams?
I think in our heart we always have some dreams to chase, and I would say think about like sort of is people sometimes get confused of their dreams versus some easy replacement that they can easily settle.
What do you mean by that?
And I would say, for example, if their dreams is to, for example, to say I want to go to the best schools to pursue, for example, study, they sometimes could settle with a local nearby place because that seems lower risk or whatever. So I would say first figure out your goal. And if you're optimizing to say you want to go to the best place to pursue study, go with that. And understand, truly figure out what your dream is. I think that can be sometimes confusing to people. And I would say if you figure that out, then you would work toward it, and that's to really pursue what you truly want. And we always have to work really hard toward that. And that's my belief toward it. And no matter how smart or these things, we always have to work hard to pursue our dream.
I agree with that. Just very curious. Even though you said that, we should go towards our dreams, go to the best school, just go forward. A lot of the women have this thing called the limiting beliefs, and we always talk about tearing down the limiting beliefs, right? So between resources and resourcefulness, how would you navigate or advise our audience to navigate between these two pools, these 2 points?
Yeah, I think you probably mentioned maybe some practical obstacles that prevent, for example, women pursuing dreams, and to say, I have this family, and can I still do it, right? I hope my example shows we all have families, and we have 2 ladies, but we also started a company too, and I think people can be, we as people, we can be very creative, and looking at you exactly to the point of the resources, how to get the resources. As I mentioned, we need to think about the support comes from the family support. I would say is a resource that we need, and so definitely we need to. When we pursue our dreams, we have to consider these factors. But I would say some of the resources is what we would pursue ourselves too at the same time. For example, if you want to say early days when you want to start a business, you would need to, let's say, use early days example, you would need these many steps, including, like, for example, buying servers, learning new technologies. Yes. You see that as resources, and we could all figure out to say, oh, these are the steps you need to pursue a business. But the same thing is, let's look at our dream. If that dream involves realizing that the first step is I need a family support, or I need my kids to go to a full-time school, then pursue that yourself too and work hard toward it, and work with others as well. And so those are the necessary steps and components. And we don't want to be deterred by the practical obstacles. At least I would say try the best that you can and try hard. And sometimes the practical things can be very brutal, just there's no way to overcome it. I understand that scenario, but at least you've tried. And you've tried your best. And then at least you said, I've done this, then I think that's a good answer as well.
Wow, Yinglian, I've learned so much in just a very short interview with you, and I can see that you have very practical and straightforward advice because you walk the talk, and that's what I love about you. So thank you very much, and thank you for being on this interview today, and thanks to our audience for watching this episode of Soul Rich Woman TV. For the show notes, it will be available at soulrichwoman.com. My name is Janisha Alora, and this is Yinglian from DataVisor. I'll see you really soon. Thank you, and bye-bye. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so honored that we are connected, and I hope that I can continue to serve you as you build your dreams. And if you love this episode, and I hope that you did, rate it 5 stars. Give us that glowing review because it will help more women around the world finding the Soul Rich Woman podcast. Alone you are strong, together we are unstoppable. Now share this with every woman who needs it, because this is how we are changing the world, one woman at a time. As always, get out of your comfort zone and go towards the dreams you've always wanted to achieve. For women who love the F word, being fabulous, having freedom, and financial independence. My dear soul-rich woman, sending you my love, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.